Hello, everyone. This is James Song here. Welcome back to the TOEFL show. This is episode 16, and we are continuing with the TOEFL listening lecture. And today, again, we are learning the most important skills that you must learn and master to do well in TOEFL listening, and that is note-taking skills, how to take notes. So it's going to be another very detailed lecture. It's a deep dive, and we're going to do it for lecture passages. So you should really concentrate or watch this episode several times and practice many times, because obviously lecture passage is a little bit or a lot harder than the conversation passage. Anyway, let's make it work. Let's do this. How to take notes, lecture passage, deep dive. Let's start. Okay, guys, are you ready? For 5 minutes or longer, straight lecture listening passage. I'm going to play the listening passage right now and write notes, take notes at the same time. So, why don't you write your own notes or watch how I take notes very carefully. Okay, here comes the passage. Let's go.
Listen to part of a lecture in a biology class. The class is discussing animal behavior.
Okay, the next kind of animal behavior I want to talk about might be familiar to you. You may have seen, for example, a bird that's in the middle of a mating ritual and suddenly it stops and preens. You know, it takes a few moments to straighten its feathers and then returns to the mating ritual. This kind of behavior, this doing something that seems completely out of place, is what we call a displacement activity. Displacement activities are activities that animals engage in when they have conflicting drives. If we take our example from a minute ago, if the bird is afraid of its mate, it's conflicted. It wants to mate, but it's also afraid and wants to run away. So instead, it starts grooming itself. So the displacement activity, the grooming, the straightening of its feathers, seems to be an irrelevant behavior. So what do you think another example of a displacement activity might be?
How about an animal that, instead of fighting its enemy or running away, it attacks a plant or a bush?
That's a really good suggestion, Carl, but that's called redirecting. The animal is redirecting its behavior to another object, in this case, the plant or the bush. But that's not an irrelevant or inappropriate behavior. The behavior makes sense. It's appropriate under the circumstances, but what doesn't make sense is the object the behavior is directed towards. Okay, who else? Carol?
I think I read in another class about an experiment where an object that the animal was afraid of was put next to its food, next to the animal's food. And the animal, it was conflicted between confronting the object and eating the food, so instead it just fell asleep. Like that?
That's exactly what I mean. Displacement occurs because the animal's got two conflicting drives, two competing urges, in this case, fear and hunger. And what happens is they inhibit each other, they cancel each other out in a way, and a third seemingly irrelevant behavior surfaces through a process that we call disinhibition. Now, in disinhibition, the basic idea is that two drives that seem to inhibit, to hold back a third drive, well, they get in the way of each other in a conflict situation and somehow lose control, lose their inhibiting effect on that third behavior, which means that the third drive surfaces. It's expressed in the animal's behavior. Now, these displacement activities can include feeding, drinking, grooming, even sleeping. I mean, these are what we call comfort behaviors. So why do you think displacement activities are so often comfort behaviors, such as grooming?
Maybe because it's easy for them to do? I mean, grooming is like one of the most accessible things an animal can do. It's something they do all the time. And they have the stimulus right there on the outside of their bodies in order to do the grooming. Or if food is right in front of them, basically they don't have to think very much about those behaviors.
Professor, isn't it possible that animals groom because they've gotten messed up a little from fighting or mating? I mean, if a bird's feathers get ruffled or an animal's fur, maybe it's not so strange for them to stop and tidy themselves up at that point.
That's another possible reason, although it doesn't necessarily explain other behaviors such as eating, drinking, or sleeping. What's interesting is that studies have been done that suggest that the animal's environment may play a part in determining what kind of behavior it displays. For example, there's a bird, the wood thrush. Anyway, when the wood thrush is in an attack-escape conflict, that is, it's caught between the two urges to escape from or to attack an enemy, if it's sitting on a horizontal branch, it'll wipe its beak on its perch. If it's sitting on a vertical branch, it'll groom its breast feathers. The immediate environment of the bird, its relationship to its immediate environment seems to play a part in which behavior will display.
All right, how did you go? Did you get everything down? How are your notes compared to mine? What do you think? Did I do a good job? Perfect job? Pretty good? Not so good? Okay, let me go to the top and explain everything that I have written word for word. And by doing that, I would be able to cover the whole passage and almost like create a reading passage without giving you the script. Okay? Give me a chance. I'll do that for you. So I'll go back to the top and start covering my notes. Okay, let's go. Okay, let's cover the notes word for word. And by doing that, I'll cover the whole passage and you will be able to understand everything. Okay, so let's go. I have written down it's a biology passage and the topic is about animal behavior. You know, you don't have to write that down, okay? But just, you know, get myself ready. Knowing the topic I'll listen to will be about animal behavior. I was just getting myself ready to really concentrate, okay? All right, so professor starts by giving an example of a bird in mating action. The bird is mating with another bird, then suddenly stops and start preening itself. So preening is like bird cleaning itself up, cleaning himself or herself up, using the beak to like clean the feather, okay? So, you know, obviously this is really weird behavior, you know. Normally you would think that if you are in mating situation, if you're doing the mating, you will continue or you will stop because you finished, right? You don't do something else, right? Okay. So the bird suddenly stops and do something else and then go back to mating. So when an animal does something that is completely out of place means something that doesn't make sense, out of context, illogical, irrelevant, inappropriate at that time. That's out of place, okay? So when an animal suddenly does something completely out of place is displacement activity, okay? So important thing here is you can write DA, you can write all the alphabets. Important thing is you need to remember the word displacement activity because it's one of the concepts so that when you see the questions, when displacement activity is written on the question, then you will recognize and you need to understand that. Okay, that's all. All right. So this displacement activity happens when animal has conflicting drives. So conflicting, as you know, obviously means like clashing, not in the same direction or not in agreement with another. So two conflicting means two opposite, fighting, clashing drives. Okay. So to give an example of this bird, to continue explaining. So let's say, I don't know why, a lecturer said it, professor said it, I didn't make this up. It's kind of funny. The bird who was mating, let's say, was a little afraid of the mate, right? Then this bird has two conflicting drives, right? So one drive is, since it's animal's nature to mate, bird wants to continue mating, right? Yeah, bird likes it. That's first drive. But second drive, because the bird is a little scared about the mate, the bird wants to run away. Okay, so that's first drive and second drive, right? So logically, okay, relevant activity will be either 1 or 2. Okay, either keep going, keep doing, or run away. One of two. But instead, the bird starts grooming itself, himself, herself, right? That's weird. Okay, so this is example of displacement activity. Okay, so you expect it to do A or B because you have two conflicting drive, but you neither does A nor B, but does something completely different. Okay, and that's completely irrelevant and inappropriate, you know, out of place, as it was already mentioned. Okay, irrelevant behavior. So, you know, professor asks the class to give another example to confirm whether the class understood this concept of displacement activity. And a male student gives an example. So let's say if an animal has two conflicting drive to fight the enemy or run away from the enemy, and if the animal starts attacking the plant, isn't this good example of displacement activity? And professor explains that's redirecting. That's not displacement activity because still animal attacked, right? He fought. So he took the first action, okay? But he didn't fight the enemy. He fought the plant, okay? So like, you know, I have two conflict drive. You know, I have my enemy in front of me. I need to fight him or run away, but I suddenly start punching the wall, not my enemy. All right. So the behavior is actually relevant. I still fought. Okay. I attacked. So I took the first action, but I didn't fight my enemy. Okay. I punched something else. Okay. So that's not displacement activity. Okay. So it's within the two drives. My action matches. Okay. So that's called redirecting. So object that it was fighting did not make sense, but fighting action kind of makes sense. Okay. All right. And professor asks for another example. Okay. And a female student gives an example to say, you know, if object an animal is afraid of is placed right next to the food, okay, then two conflict drive, right? Probably animal wants to eat the food, so go next to the object that the animal is scared of and take the food, or animal cannot approach near food because animal wants to run away from the object that he or she is afraid of. Okay, so two conflict drive. And what does animal do? So go near the food, take the food, or run away, give up the food and run away. Which one? One or two? No, the animal actually falls in sleep. He starts sleeping. She starts sleeping. Okay, so this is perfect example of displacement activity, right? So the professor says, right, that's exactly right. Okay, all right. So explains animal had two conflicting drive. Okay, conflicting drives. Sorry, fear to run away from the object, or hunger, go and actually take the food. But the animal neither takes first action or second action, but takes completely irrelevant, out of place, inappropriate action, that is sleeping. Okay, all right. The animal doesn't run away, animal does not take the food, animal actually starts sleeping. Okay, so that's displacement activity. You understand, right? Okay, cool. And professor continues explaining this situation a little deeper. So when an animal has two conflicting drives, right, it inhibits each action out, meaning inhibit means prevent, so stops from something to happen. That's inhibit, all right? Okay, so two conflicting drives. So like, I want to take the food. I want to take the food, right? So I want to go and take the food. But this drive, I'm scared. I'm fearful of the object next to the food. So because of this drive, first drive, it inhibits me from the taking the food, which is the second possible action. Okay. And also, because I'm hungry, right? It inhibits me from first action, which is running away from the food, running away, far away from the object that I'm scared of. So these two drives cancels first action out. Because of my second drive, I cannot take the first action. Because of my first drive, cannot take the second action. So this inhibit, it two conflicting drives cancels each actions out. So this is a reason why the animal does not take first action or second action, but it actually takes third action, something very different, right? Okay. This is what it means. Did you understand it? If you understood this completely, then you are very advanced. You have very good listening skills. Okay. So this process is called disinhibition. Okay. This process of two conflicting drives canceling action one and action two, and finally doing third action, something really strange. That process is called, and the reason and the process is called disinhibition. Okay. So it's just repeating itself. Okay. So two conflicting drives inhibit first action or second action to take place. It loses control. Okay. And ends up doing something completely irrelevant. Okay, so this inhibition of first action and second action makes disinhibition to third action. Okay, you cannot prevent third action. You prevent first action and second action. Okay, but it cannot inhibit, it cannot prevent the displacement activity, third action. Okay, that's sleeping. All right, so that's disinhibition to displacement activity. Okay, the third action. All right, cool. If you understood this completely, then you are very advanced level. Okay, so if you didn't quite understand this way, and now you understand after my explanation of the notes, then you are doing a very good job. Okay, let's continue. Next paragraph. So displacement activities are often feeding, eating, drinking, grooming, or sleeping, right? These are all comfort behaviors. So the question is, why displacement activities are so often comfort behaviors? Why? What's the reason? So professor asks this to the class. And the male student says his opinion is maybe the reason is, answer is, it's easy to do. Comfort behaviors are easy to do. Like, you know, grooming is very accessible, easy to do. You can do it whenever, wherever, and you have tools to do it. You can just do it. It's not hard. All right. And also, like eating, you know, if there's food in front of an animal, the animal doesn't need to think, just go and eat, right? So the man thinks the reason is easy to do. The professor actually does not answer after male student finish. You know, the professor does not say that's right or that's wrong. So another female student keeps going by giving another reason, maybe another answer. Okay. This is quite funny, right? Female student says, professor, does bird groom because maybe they're a little bit messed up, they're a little bit untidy from fighting or running away or mating because of their action? Because if the animal is mating, during mating, the bird got all messed up. So is that why they groom, right? So actually, professor does not completely disagrees. Professor says, yeah, that's possible. Maybe, maybe not. That's possible. But your reason does not explain other behaviors like eating, drinking, and sleeping. So it's pretty weak reason. Okay, professor did not say it's wrong, but you know, it's possible. And professor also said it's another possible reason, meaning the male student reason is also maybe or possibly right. Okay, so could be, could not be, maybe, may not be. So professor did not say these two reasons are wrong, but, you know, maybe. Okay, it's not like perfect reason. So what's the next step? Yeah, professor needs to answer the question herself. So why so many displacement activities are often comfort behaviors? Why? Unfortunately, professor, answers, but kind of indirect. It's not like super direct answer. But anyway, professor does answer the question by saying environment plays a part in determining which behavior does animal act out. Meaning, if I may paraphrase, environment actually influences animals' behavior. So it depends on an environment. Okay? All right? So this is the answer, depending on the environment. So professor continues by giving an example of another bird. Wood thrush is just a species, I guess, type of bird. This wood thrush or bird, when it has two conflicting drives, again, okay, wants to attack the enemy or run away from the enemy. It depends on an environment, right? So if the bird is standing on a horizontal branch of the tree, then the animal does this action, wipe its beak. But if the environment is different, he acts differently. The bird acts differently. That's the key. All right? That's the important information. So this is environment 1. This is environment 2. Okay? So if the bird is sitting on or standing on a horizontal branch, which is one situation, one type of environment, the bird acts this way. Okay? If the bird is on different environment, is standing on or sitting on vertical branch, the action is different. Bird grooms itself, okay? Himself, herself, okay? Bird grooms instead of wiping beak, okay? So these are two different actions. So in environment 1, okay, this action. In environment 2, this action. Okay, so it depends on the environment. And the listening passage finishes by concluding, okay, stating one more time. So environment, if I may paraphrase, decides animals' behavior. It depending on the environment. So, you know, it's not really straight answer, I don't think, of this question. Okay, it kind of partially answers the question. That's it. How good was that? Was it pretty good? Do you think it was comprehensive in comprehending this listening passage? Yeah. 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 And, you know, one thing you have to agree with me is that I only use the words I have written, I have taken down. I did not like memorize different information sentences and just put it in there and told you additional information. I did not do that. I only covered each and every word I have written down. And when I explain every word, you know, the note I have taken down, then, you know, the full passage comes out. This is the best way. Okay. All right. So there you go. So you need to practice to get to this level. So there are 3 things you need to do, as I already told you in episode 14. Okay. First, you need to listen to the same passage. This is important. Same passage multiple times. Okay. So this will help you improve your fundamental listening skills. Right? I mean, you know, I can teach you all the techniques in the world, but if your listening ability does not improve, then honestly, you are not going to get a very good score in TOEFL listening. So you need to listen to the same passage multiple times. If you are scoring more than 24, 25, I advise you to maybe listen to the same passage at least 3 times or more. If you are scoring under 20 out of 30 in listening, you know, you really need to listen to the same passage at least 5 times, ideally up to 10 times. Okay. Really keep listening to the same thing and improve your listening skills and try to understand everything in the passage. Okay. So, and as you know, step 2 is you need to practice note taking, just like what I did, of same passage, okay? Multiple times. You know, you need to keep practicing the same thing, and you need to get better. You know, you really need to become good at one passage. You become so good at one passage that when you try new passage, you can apply your skills. I mean, if you are scoring under 20 out of 30 in TOEFL listening, and if you only listen to the passage once or twice of one passage, and if you're only practicing note taking like once or twice, you're not going to improve. Okay, because your skills cannot be applied. You need to improve your basic skills first, right? Okay, so when you really master one passage, when you listen to new passage, then your listening has improved and your skills to write notes improved. So although it's a new passage, you're going to do a lot better on your new passage from first time compared to the last passage. But, you know, if you practice only once or twice, it's not going to happen for you. All right. And number 3, as you know, you really need to make the full sentence of your notes by speaking out aloud. Okay, I know this is difficult, but if you try all 3 things, especially third technique as well, then you're going to improve tremendously. You're going to really improve dramatically. Okay, so let's do step 3. Let me show you how to do this. Let me go back to the top of the passage of my notes and, you know, show you how to practice this. So this passage starts by professor giving an example. Let me change the color for you. Of the bird in mating, but it stops and start preening itself and then return to the mating action. So this action of preening is completely out of place, right? So this action is called displacement activity. Okay, so displacement activity happens when an animal has 2 conflicting drives, right? So to explain, for example, the same bird was maybe afraid of its mate that he was mating with, then the bird will have 2 drives, right? The bird maybe wants to keep mating, right? Keep going. Or because this bird is so scared, the bird wants to stop mating and run away. But instead, if or when bird actually grooms itself, then we call this displacement activity. Okay? So displacement activity is something that is completely irrelevant and inappropriate based on the situation. Okay? So does anybody have another example? Okay, professor. So if an animal is conflicting between fight the enemy or run away from enemy, if the animal starts attacking the plant, is this good example? No, that's redirecting, because action was still fighting, still attacking, but object that the animal was fighting was irrelevant. So what this means is what the animal did, fighting, makes sense. It's not irrelevant, but object the animal was fighting was irrelevant. So this is called redirecting. Okay, another example, anyone? Okay, professor. So if object the animal is afraid of was put next to the food, so the animal has two conflicting drive, then rather than running away or taking the food, if the animal suddenly sleeps, is this a good example? Yes, that's exactly right. And the animal had two conflicting drives, fear or hunger, but the animal took action that has nothing to do with fear or hunger. Okay, so that's good example. So what happens is when animal has two conflicting drive, these two conflicting drive cancels each action out. It cancels both actions, and it pushes third drive, third action to happen. This process is called disinhibition. Okay, then why displacement activity? Sorry. Displacement activity is often comfort behaviors like feeding, drinking, grooming, or sleeping. Then why often displacement activities are comfort behaviors? Why? Why do you think that? Okay, I think because it's easy to do. So grooming is very accessible, and eating, you don't need to think, you can just do it. Okay, so isn't easy to do first reason? How about this? Doesn't bird groom because the bird got a little messed up by fighting or mating? Isn't that the reason? Yeah, that's possible. That's another possible reason, but still it does not explain other comfort behaviors. It only explains the grooming. Okay, so environment research shows, environment the animal is in actually determines the animal's behavior. For example, this bird, wood thrush, when the bird is in two conflicting drive of attacking the enemy or escaping from the enemy, if the bird is on the horizontal branch, bird wipes its beak, but when the bird is on vertical branch, the bird actually grooms himself. So it really, different action happens, depends on environment the animals are in. So it depends on environment. It's decided by environment. How is that? So this is practice you need to do. Okay? Like as I told you in episode 14, if speaking like instantaneously, simultaneously is too much for you, you can always start by writing this out if this is easy for you. But since this is listening, not reading or writing, if you can do it, speaking it out aloud, just like what I did, by looking at the notes, look at the notes and try to speak the full sentence out of the notes that you have written, is the best way if you can do it. And this is James's original technique. But, it will help you a lot. Like you will master the TOEFL listening section. That's end of note-taking session for the lecture passage. See, I told you. Lecture is completely different animal compared to the conversation passage. Okay. Next episode, I will teach you how to answer all the questions right. Deep dive for lecture listening passage. Thank you, guys.